Okay, friends, welcome to this first day in the year 2021. And for all of those who are listening, watching out there in virtual land, we want to wish you also a Happy New Year. And so we're going to, this is the last morning of our retreat. So it's appropriate that we start out this first meditation of this new year with sending out Metta vibrations to all living beings, of course, especially with the turmoil of this last year, 2020, filled with so much, problems and fears and insecurities and so on, to wishing that this next year will be a bit more peaceful, and also wishing that everyone can, so if they haven't already, to learn the Dhamma and to especially to learn and practice meditation, so that when problems arise, people will be able to more skillfully or effectively manage their reactions to the inevitable kind of problems and so on that come about. So anyway, we're going to start this meditation period with sending out thoughts of metta to ourselves and spreading it out to the whole world, and then going into our regular meditation after that. And just try to sit straight, comfortable. You can just feel your body sitting there. Just try to feel the outline of the sitting body. And then begin some 3-part breathing, some deep, slow breathing to get the mind grounded, centered in the breathing body, in the present moment. Especially after breathing in, hold the air in your lungs for several seconds, or as long as you comfortably can. Just imagine that oxygenating blood going out to all the cells of the body, tranquilizing them, strengthening them. On the out breath, feel the relaxing contraction of the out breath, feeling the last bit of air go out of the lungs. And try to take several deep, slow breaths like that, sending metta to your own body. In your own body, the cells of your body need metta, kindness from you, in terms of treating it well. Deep, slow breathing is one of the best ways of treating the body well. So with each, as you're holding in the breath, just imagine that metta, sending metta to all the cells of your body. Each cell of your body is like a little being. On the out breath, feel that relaxation into the present moment. And then just think along these lines to yourself as you're taking a few more deep, slow breaths. May I be well, peaceful, and wise. May I be free from excessive attachment or greed, anger or hatred, jealousy, envy, fear, pride, and ignorance. May I be free from the pain, sorrow, and sufferings of body and mind, brought about by such unskillful thought, speech, and actions. And may I have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. May I be able to continue to deepen my understanding of the Dhamma and practice of meditation to help free the mind from confusion and suffering. May I be able to continue also to cultivate Metta, loving friendliness, kindness to all living beings, and to integrate that into my daily life. Continue to take some more deep, slow breaths if you can. We expand these Metta vibrations outward. So kind of just remember your parents or other family members. On the next in-breath, holding in the breath, just imagine sending these Metta vibrations out to your parents, even if they've passed away or if they're sick in a hospital. Or just imagine these. Try to feel that piti in your own body. That piti is like Metta also. So generate that piti through your concentration, especially holding in the breath and on the out breath. Just imagine those piti, Metta vibrations. Finding your parents, family members, even if they're in another realm. Imagine these Metta vibrations permeating their bodies and minds, soothing the fires of any suffering, greed, hatred, and delusion. And with each out breath, just keep sending out these Metta vibrations. Your parents, brothers and sisters, grandparents, aunts and uncles, nephews and nieces, other relatives. We're all karmically interrelated. Just with the idea, may all of them be well, happy, and peaceful, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance, free from pain, sorrow, and sufferings of body and mind, brought about by their unskillful thought, speech, and action. And may they also have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. And if they haven't already, may they also have the opportunity in this new year to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, and to learn and practice meditation, to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May they be well, peaceful, and wise. And try to continue this, expanding this radiation of Metta. Now kind of just sending these Metta vibrations to your friends, good friends, colleagues at work. Even recall all the different friends and people you might have known since your childhood up to the present moment, even if you've lost contact with them, just in a general way. Also including all the ordinary folks out there that are struggling to survive in this difficult time, or people that are out of work or suffering from the pandemic. Just imagine with each out breath these waves of metta being pure love, pure wisdom, pure energy, permeating their bodies and minds, soothing the fires of their pains and suffering, soothing the fires of their greed, hatred, and delusion. Just with the thought that may all of them be well, happy, and peaceful, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance, free from the pain, sorrow, and sufferings of body and mind, brought about by such unskillful thought, speech, and action. And may they also have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. May they also have the opportunity to hear the teachings of the Dhamma and to learn and practice meditation to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May they be well, peaceful, and wise. And now continuing to radiate these thought vibrations of metta, of pure love, pure energy, pure wisdom, out further, especially if you're send these vibrations out to the rulers of the countries, or the people that run the different countries, the presidents, prime ministers, the Congress, the parliaments, or whatever form of government people have, especially in this country, the US. Just imagine sending these waves of metta down Constitution Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue, from the Capitol building down to the White House. Just with each out breath, just imagine these waves of piti and metta rolling down the streets of Washington, D.C., soothing the greed, hatred, and delusion in the minds of people, with their stress, anxiety, and fear. Especially, sending a little extra vibrations, the president and members of Congress who are, fighting over who gets what, making a lot of people suffer. Just wishing that they have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to make the right decision. So in this next year, and then just continuing to send out these waves of metta with each out breath, going across the countryside, through the various towns, cities, and eventually across the whole country, in all 10 directions. So with each out breath, just imagine these waves of metta going further and further outward in concentric circles, waves. Canada in the north, Mexico, South America in the south, across the oceans to Asia, over the Atlantic to England and Europe. Just imagine with each out breath, it's these waves of metta permeating the bodies and minds of all the people, tranquilizing their fears and agitation, awakening the seed of metta and wisdom in their heart. And if you can imagine it, try to imagine the beautiful blue-green earth suspended in space. It's from the NASA photograph. Just imagine these clouds of warm, healing metta vibrations permeating and saturating, suffusing the whole atmosphere, the earth, and even beyond. These healing energy, metta, pure wisdom, pure love, pure energy. Just cultivating the idea that may all living beings, wherever they might be, living far or near, the weak or the strong, the rich or the poor, visible or invisible, born or yet to be born. May all living beings be well, peaceful and happy, free from greed, hatred, fear and ignorance, free from the pain, sorrow and sufferings of body and mind brought about by their unskillful thought, speech and action. May all beings be able to hear the teachings of the Dhamma and to learn and practice meditation, to free their minds from confusion and suffering. May all beings be able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the ultimate interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. May all beings be well, peaceful and wise. May all beings be well, peaceful and wise. Just like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful and wise. Just maintaining that connection in the breathing body. Just tuning in to those piti sensations in the body. Just cultivating present moment awareness. So to tune in, feel that organic aliveness in the body. Knowing that organic aliveness in your body is the same organic aliveness in all the body, whether human, animal, or other. And that's our common thread, that pure life force that causes your heart to beat, cells to interact, sustain life. No matter what people may look like on the outside, on the inside, everyone's the same. Mostly. Really open up and feel that organic aliveness, the subtle pulsation, other sensations coming and going, whether on the surface of the skin or deep inside the body. Just understanding that this human life is very precious, very valuable. But this life force could be terminated or snuffed out due to many different conditions. So to cultivate the motivation, the determination, try to practice more Dhamma, more meditation in this coming year. Make that your New Year's resolution. Don't take this life force for granted. Due to our past karma or present karma, this life could be taken away very quickly. When this body does die, the only thing you take with it is your mind, the accumulated karmic formation. Stay centered and grounded in the present moment, in this breathing body. Just opening up to the flow of impermanence, of sensation, sounds, thoughts, urges. They're constantly just coming, going, changing. Just underneath all of that change and impermanence and mental agitation, it's the parallel dimension of the now. The present moment awareness. Is the essential underlying seed of life and all living beings. That knowing faculty. It's the knowing of sitting, breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. That's the only constant, stable thing there is in our body or mind. Everything is always changing. It's not reliable. This breathing body with its life force vibrations inside is always calling you back home, inviting you to take a rest. From the treadmill, past and future, neurotic thinking, worries, fears, anxieties, confusion. This breathing body is really your meditation room. That you carry with you all the time. Dukkha pata chani dukkha bhaya pata chani bhaya soka pata chani soka Hontu sabbi pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. Thus spoke the Buddha. To finish this meditation and the retreat, let's invite you to join chanting the word sadhu 3 times slowly with the breathing. Take a deep breath, and chanting the word on a long out breath, feeling the vibrations in your body and mind. Sadhu. Sadhu. So again, the meaning of that word sadhu is something like it's good, or excellent, especially in referring to, you spent this last 3 days practicing meditation, trying to develop some inward tranquility and some more insights, understanding about your own mind and life. So that's a good thing. Trying to see how we can improve the quality of our mind and life, especially the spiritual aspects of it. So it's a very rare opportunity that people have to spend, several days or even longer, taking that time to look within themselves and to try to cultivate more mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Much of the world is kind of doing the opposite. Anyway, so you've already been sitting for a while. Looks like some of your knees or legs are starting to ache. So let's stand up for a few minutes before we have the closing Dhamma talk. If you need to use the facilities, rescue emergency, go and do that, and come back. Just do some standing awareness. If you standing stretches on your own, if you like. Yes, come back, sit down. Okay, friends, so this is the last day of the retreat, the first day of the new year, the first day of the rest of your life. So it's always good on the New Year's, or even at other times like on one's birthday, but to reflect on, what we're doing in our life, and to reflect especially on the last year, and seeing any things, unskillful things that might have been done, or any other things that, types of problems and suffering that you might have encountered because of unmindful actions. And then reflecting on, the coming year, to try to, hopefully avoid making some of the mistakes or creating the kind of unnecessary tensions or stress due to, unmindful thoughts, speech, and actions. And in addition to that is the reflection on really, what is life all about? Or let's say, what is really the purpose of life? That's a big question, of course. And but it's also interesting to reflect on, how did this life evolve? And to reflect on, in general, the idea of evolution. And so, just for a little bit, kind of try to, take this little journey or follow along this train of thought. Let's say if you had, if we believe in Darwin's theory of evolution, of course some people don't, but anyway, it's according to science, it's generally accepted, that theory of evolution, where, the first one-cell organisms living in the ocean started multiplying, and then they started mutating because of scarcity of food. They started mutating the species to develop better ways to keep from getting eaten by bigger bacteria or fish, and adapting to survive. And that kept on going. So all the species developed in the ocean, from the smallest little fish and crustaceans to, huge sharks or whales. And then eventually the oceans got too crowded. And so certain fish or crabs or whatever, crawled out of the water and were looking around and, wow, look at all the big place out here. It's not so crowded. And so, but they had to adapt to breathe oxygen, or adapt to move around on land. So the mutation of the species and adaptation and so on, started to, grow. And mainly it was because of the desire to survive, the desire to live. And then the species on the land multiplied, and the food on the surface of the earth started to get more scarce. So certain animals kind of were looking up in the trees and saw these fruits and things growing up high, and said, "Oh, I should go up there and get some of that." So they had to, grow nails or wings, and so on. So like that, the adaptation, mutation kept on going, but because of the desire to live. And so then all the earth was, all the animal species evolved, and then eventually the human beings. And then from the earliest human beings as well, up until modern day, it was a continual process of change and adaptation, survival of the fittest, developing survival skills. So, all these marvelous things that you see in nature, animals developing all these various ways to survive, either to escape being eaten or develop the ability to eat others, or to promulgate the species, and so on. And so even up to the present day, that's occurring. Now, so the bodies have evolved, but also the minds have evolved as well, from the the primitive animal kind of mind to that of the human being or ego-centered type of consciousness. But anyway, that whole process of evolution has been driven basically by the desire to live, and for a large part, it was a group evolution. So the species evolved more or less as a group. That means they basically did the same things, looked the same way, ate the same things, but largely it didn't require too much thinking. And the babies just learn what their parents do, and then they grow up and they teach their babies to do the same thing. And even here as human beings, it's also in a similar way. Whatever country you're in, or locality, you tend to just copy what other people are doing. And the parents want you to look like them, or act like them, or think like them, or believe like them in the country. And if somebody does something different, they're looked at with a little skepticism, or they're looked at with an aberration. So the kind of the conditioning to conform, or that pressure to conform, to believe and think and act the way that the group does. So that's primarily has been a group evolution. And it doesn't require too much thinking, really. It just basically, the babies are taught certain things that they should do, as we already mentioned. And, if they get out of line, they might be punished. So this group evolution has continued even up to the present day. We can see that. And very few people break the mold. But this was even happening in the Buddha's day. And the individual can only evolve as far as the group. And if you're satisfied with the group evolution, okay, fine and good. It's up to you. But somewhere along the line, certain individuals weren't satisfied with that kind of group conditioning. So they started to think out of the box. And then they started to take sort of evolution into their own hands. And that's what the Buddha did. Another great, religious people, saints, and so on. But especially the Buddha, he wasn't satisfied with what his teachers were teaching him. You all know the story, right? Siddhartha Gautama leaves the palace and goes out and tries to learn some meditation and from different meditation masters, and he learned that and mastered it, but it didn't really bring him satisfaction. He thought, well, something is missing here, And so he said, why should I go around asking other people for the truth? And, I have a mind. I'm a human being. I have a mind. Let me sit down here and think it out. And so the Buddha even left his friends in the ascetic life. And most of you probably know the story, right? So he was practicing self-mortification and denying the body any pleasures and fasting. And that was one of the beliefs of the day, that if you kind of denied your body any comfort, any satisfaction, and sort of starved it from sensory contact, that you could liberate the soul, or you could attain salvation, whatever they thought that to be. And so the Buddha practiced that, and he almost mastered that, but in doing so, he almost died also. So it is said that he fasted and did all these austerities to a certain point. He said that if he tried to, touch his spine, his backbone, or he could touch his back or something. He was so thin, he was so weak, he could no longer sit up to meditate. And he thought, what the use is this, And so he left. So the main point here is that he broke away from the group. And the group shunned him. They said, look at this Gautama, he's giving up. He's reverting to the life of luxury, eating food again. And so he had to wander by himself. And then, of course, he wandered to the Bodhi tree and sat down and started thinking out of the box by just focusing, on his breathing and allowing his attention to go inside and get centered inside. And then he started to observe some deeper levels of body-mind experience and so on that no one else had taught him before. And it culminated in his experience of enlightenment. And so he became a true individual, or he became an individual. And he evolved, beyond the group conditioning to attain, the Aryan stages. But he had to, get out of that group conditioning in order to do that, because no one else was appreciating that. And even then, he also got criticized and shunned by a lot of his previous companions and so on. But later, they realized that something had changed in him for the better, and then eventually people came to hear him. But the main point is that had he just continued to follow the group conditioning or the group philosophy, that he might not have become the Buddha. And so, in the same way, now here as human beings, we've all, have evolved, according to the group conditioning. And it started, let's say, with the hippie movement, right? So somewhere along in the early 60s, the young people started, questioning this American dream idea of, getting married at a young age and have a house and a white picket fence and have a family and all that stuff. Or, wanting to fit the mold of having a crew cut and using bushwhacks and just looking like a proper person, right? So they rebelled. grew out their hair. You all know that. So, and they were looked down on kind of negatively too, weren't they? Maybe even some of your parents, or some of you were around then. But anyway, so the hippies were sort of some of the first persons, in this modern era anyway, to question the establishment. And they were persecuted for it too. But unfortunately, they got off onto drugs, and many of them ruined their lives through drugs. But anyway, that was the start of the inquiry, questioning, inquiring. Is there something else to life than this American dream, or whatever the dream of whatever philosophy or cultural conditioning and so on you might have gotten into? And people searching for a new way of thinking. And instead of just keep continuing to run around the circles, following what their parents did or what everybody else in the society is doing, they wanted to, find something else. And that's really the beginning of, you could say, individual evolution. But the group can only take you so far. And if you're not satisfied with the group conditioning, you have to take life into your own hands and start exploring for oneself. And of course, that's what happened in the last 50, 60 years to all the New Age kind of stuff and all this exploration of so many different types of alternative lifestyles, alternative therapies, even religions and so on. People are trying to find something that makes more meaning for their life. But again, it means sometimes having to go alone. Because usually out of one family, only one person may or may not develop an interest in, let's say, following something different. And it takes a lot of courage. But anyway, that's the beginning of what you could call the spiritual path and the individual evolution. You have to take the life into your own hands. And if others are not ready or willing to want to change, well, then you have to do that alone or find others who are thinking the similar way. But then you have to hear about something. So like, again, in the early 60s and with the hippies, they wanted to change, but like, they didn't know how, because when nothing was much available back in those days. But then, some gurus started coming from the East, or a few intrepid people that went over to India or China and other places and started to learn and discover new things, right? Because in those days, or before plane travel, most countries were all boxed in, closed off. They didn't. It was hard to find information about other cultures or religions and so on, except for maybe in some dusty old university libraries or something. It was not easy to get that information. So, but basically then, in order to change, one has to hear something. And so people started hearing about the Dhamma. Whether it was yoga, Dhamma, largely it was yoga, the practice of yoga and Buddhism that first kind of came to this country or European countries and started attracting attention because it offered some new alternatives. So they're using all these terms, such as enlightenment, and of course the word enlightenment referred to, I think it was the 1600s or something, the age of enlightenment. I don't know the exact, I got any history buffs here. When was the age of enlightenment? 1400s to 1600s. But so anyway, this started hearing about terms of enlightenment and nibbana and liberation, and then started hearing about meditation and so on. So that was attracting a lot of people. And then slowly books started to be read, and people started reading books about, various primarily Eastern traditions. And, they heard about, to be a spiritual person, you have to be a vegetarian, or you have to fast for a certain amount of time, and you got to practice these type of exercises and this type of meditation, watching your breath, and they started hearing about these terms about karma and rebirth and so on. And people started to kind of pick and choose the kind of things that kind of titillated them the most or pricked their attention. Oh yeah, vegetarian. Oh, maybe I'll try that. And then so then maybe they'd be a vegetarian for a while, and then maybe they got some physical condition, and somebody said, "Oh, you shouldn't be vegetarian. You're going to die if you don't eat meat or something." And so maybe they, or they hear about, "Oh, you got to practice morality. You got to practice the precepts. And give up all these things. Stop having free sex and all these other things." And people go, "Oh, well, that's cool. I'll try that." So they tried doing these different things. So they practice the precepts for a while. They'd be a vegetarian for a while, or they practice meditation for a while, or the various type of things that were out there, and then oftentimes they would give it up if they weren't making as quick a progress as they thought they might or should. They would give it up and then try something else. But a lot of them were gaining some kind of benefits from that. Maybe they started watching, like TM came to this country, probably the first type of meditation that came to this country, TM. Even I took TM as my first entrance to meditation too. So, and then all these teachers started coming, Buddhist monks and yogis and so on, and giving lectures and workshops around. And so, people were going to like a smorgasbord, and they would go to one for a while, but again, if it didn't offer quick enlightenment or quick change, they would go to somebody else, and they kept on like shopping around. They'd do it for a while, and they would stop. But, they were getting some kind of benefits from some of those things. But it came to some point where it was like they came up against an invisible barrier or an invisible wall, which their forward progress kind of stalled or stopped. And then maybe they, lost their interest in it. So maybe they stopped altogether doing any kind of so-called, self-help improvement or spiritual practice until they got into a difficult situation again, and somebody else said, "Oh man, you got to try that again. Try this meditation." And so, that's been going on for many, many years. But for a lot of people, the practice has been kind of haphazard. It's been kind of sporadic. They do it for a while, then they stop. And they do something else for a while, and then they stop. And they go back to the same thing again for a while, and they stop. Whether it's practicing yoga exercises or it's, following certain types of diet, it's following the precepts, it's practicing meditation, or, being a different form of Buddhist. Maybe you're a Mahayana Buddhist for a while, and then you decide to be a, Theravada Buddhist or a Tibetan Buddhist. And all these different things, they offer, different things for different people. But the thing is, people were diluting the practice. They weren't sticking with one thing long enough to really get change from that. It's sort of like digging a well. If you give some person a shovel and say, go dig for water over there, the person digs down a couple feet and gets tired. There's no water here. But maybe there was if you have dug a couple more feet. I mean, he goes to another spot and the same thing. Digs for a while, gets tired, there's no water here, assumes there's no water because he didn't give it time. So like that, and that's what a lot of people have been doing in the last 40, 50 years. Because they're kind of expecting things to happen, quickly. So, in order to get beyond that, a change has to be made. And that's often called, what has been called the path of irregular steps. I mean, it's kind of a path, a spiritual path, but it's kind of, sporadic. It's irregular. It's not systematic. And so therefore, it, for a lot of people, it kind of just stagnates, or it reaches a certain level, and then they don't seem to make more progress. So a change has to be made from that kind of sporadic practice, irregular practice, to a more regular practice. And that's where, especially in our understanding of the Dhamma, in the Buddhism, that something like going for refuge is usually considered an important aspect of the practice. Because a lot of people back in those early days, they didn't really make a real commitment. People don't like commitments, right? So they just try to practice, but without really making a commitment. And so that often doesn't pan out very well, or they lose that interest. So, the foundation of, let's say, the Dhamma practice within Buddhism especially, is the going for refuge. It means making a commitment, saying, I'm tired of just running around in circles and trying all these different things. Let me just, settle down and try to focus on this one path. If it's something that you feel comfortable with, and so to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And I've already talked about that in one of the previous talks. And that means commitment to the Dhamma means the practice. So following the guidelines of the Eightfold Path that we talked about yesterday, right? So to get a good understanding. A lot of people started all these different spiritual practices before there was, of course, a lot of books or information about it. They just heard little snippets of this or this and this, Oh, watch your breath for 10 minutes and you'll see this big ball of light in your mind and you'll attain enlightenment. But they had no idea of what it was or how to do it, or the other supporting kind of things. So the right understanding, the Buddha wanted us to really understand clearly what you're getting into, and also a lot of the background kind of information about it. And then, so right understanding, and then the right thought or resolve, and then the rest of the Eightfold Path. So it's very systematic. And so, but the commitment is that taking refuge is that we've tried to take refuge in so many things. Take refuge in material happiness, for example, or take refuge in that means getting our satisfaction and so on from so many different types of things, but so many of them, kind of burned out or, wound up not providing that kind of sustenance. So it's why the one has to cultivate the regular practice. It's really grounded in reality, you know. And that's why the Buddha's teaching is so great, you know. It wasn't just about, you know, believe in a God somewhere up there, you know, we don't even know what, you know, just believe it. And, you know, it's hard for people. But when he says, go inside your body, that's your body here, right? Sit down and, you know, go inside. Watch your breathing. Feel the sensations in the body. That's direct experience that no one could deny, or any skeptic. You know, develop mindfulness, concentration. Use this body as a laboratory. Become your own scientist. Become your own shrink. And that's, you know, really because it's grounded inside you, in your own body and in your own mind. That's where our life comes from, is from the sensations and thoughts that are within this own body and our mind. And the way that we interface and interact in the world around us, but all those, that's all coming from inside. So, you know, it's really grounded in the reality, not some kind of imagined thing or, you know, fantasy or idea or somebody else's idea. And the Buddha was giving us the tools that we were born with to conduct our own investigation. So that is, you know, why nowadays, of course, you know, meditation is becoming quite popular, and of course, like mindfulness meditation, they're starting to teach it all. You know, it's even mentioned on the 6 o'clock news. You know, news anchors are starting to write books about the mindfulness meditation, and you know, they're teaching it in hospitals for so many types of everything from A to Z, right? And which is, you know, it's all well and good, but you know, a lot of times people just see meditation as kind of a medical practice, you know, something just to get your body more and mind more healthy, but kind of stop it with that, you know, like to overcome your neurosis or overcome your anger, or slow down your heartbeat, you know, to lower your blood pressure, so many things like that, which are all well and good, and certainly are benefits. But, you know, there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, a lot more can be gotten out of it. So that is that, you know, so, you know, with the new year and so on, and, you know, New Year's resolutions, of course, you know, everybody's made New Year's resolutions, and most of them are wind up people not being able to keep them. But, you know, as Dhamma practitioners, as I mentioned at the beginning, we should review what we've been doing in our last year, and, you know, seeing if anything could be improved in that, you know. And if you're, you know, missing a lot of, not keeping up a regular practice, and then you can see the effects of not keeping up a regular practice, even yoga practice, you know. You might practice yoga for a while and get pretty flexible, but if you give it up, a lot of people maybe, or meditation, then they get sick. Okay, and then they have a viable excuse why, you know, they can't practice yoga, because they were in a car accident, they got all bungled up. Or if you got sick for a long time, you didn't have any energy to meditate, you had to leave it off. It is very hard to kickstart the practice again. As I mentioned yesterday, in the fact that it's easy to start to do things, habits that are bad for us, and hard to give them up, but hard to start good habits and easy to give them up. Easy in terms of, just any little thing that happens to come up and delay your practice for a couple of days, it starts to get a habit, and then before you know it, the practice is almost evaporates in terms of, let's say, a daily regular practice, or maybe reading some suttas or meditation, of course. And that's why I encourage people to practice what I call the M&Ms. Because a lot of people think, oh, meditation. Teacher said I had to meditate, sit down for an hour. And if you think you got to sit down for an hour, immediately the mind goes, oh no, starting to remember the pains that you might get, or the sleepiness that might come up, and it's kind of discouraging. You think it's all or nothing. If I can't meditate for an hour, then I might as well not even meditate. But when people come on a retreat, they get enthused. And let's say your practice slipped away for a while, then people say, "Oh, I need a retreat," right? People tell me that quite a lot. I need a retreat. I got to do a retreat. Got any retreats coming up? Okay. Anyway, so they come on a retreat, and maybe they get enthusiasm to meditate. Maybe they had a few kind of good meditations, and I want to meditate again. So then they go home with these good intentions. Okay, I'm going to sit for 2 days every day, or 2 hours, or at least 2 times a day, because that was the teachers normally tell you. To make best progress, it's good to meditate twice a day, morning and evening usually. So a person comes home from a retreat, maybe they've made up their little schedule. Okay, I'm going to get up every day at 5:30 and meditate for 45 minutes. In the evening also. And then, maybe they do for the first day or two. And then because they've been on a retreat and they haven't talked to their friends, and they, because of COVID-19, they couldn't go anywhere. And maybe now the pandemic, if it gets over with, it'll get worse in terms of people want to make up for lost time, right? So but anyway, so when you go home, so maybe you have to work for somebody else, because while you were at the retreat, somebody else was covering your work site, or somebody had come over to house sit your dogs and cats. And so now they're going on vacation. They ask you to do that. And so anyway, little by little, usually the evening meditation is the first meditation that goes. Because as you get back doing things, then you feel tired. So or you get stressed out at work. And so, you don't feel like doing the evening meditation. And then the morning meditation drops down from 45 minutes, maybe after a week or two, to 30 minutes for whatever reasons. And then after another couple of weeks or so, the 30-minute meditation might drop down to 15 minutes. Then before you know it, you're swigging down your last bit of coffee, and going out the door, and you pat the Buddha on the head and say, "Namo Buddhaya, you meditate for me." And that becomes all of your meditation. Oh, yeah. That happened to anybody? Okay. So anyway, that's happens quite a lot, because, over the last 45 years, I've, met the same people over and over again. And, that seems to be the common story in so many people. So, what's a person to do? Because again, they think that they have to meditate for a long period of time, and And that's what's kind of frightening, imagining the pain that's going to come to them. Or they're just going to get sleepy and they say, what's the use, But again, as you might have experienced, you might have thought, how many people at some point thought, probably, why should I meditate? I don't think I'll be able to have a good meditation today. You kind of be reluctant and you say, well, okay, I'll do it anyway. You go to sit down and hardly without any effort, your mind kind of just goes to a really good place and kind of almost surprise you. Like, wow, that ever happened to anybody? So you see that, we shouldn't make that excuse about, assuming that you're not going to have a good meditation just because you're a little tired or because something else like that. And in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of the Eights, one of my favorite little suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya is about the bases of indolence. So Buddha was talking about the different types of people. That means indolence means kind of laziness, especially in terms of Dhamma practice. So a person has to make a journey. So he says, I have to prepare for my journey. I have to skip meditation this morning. So, then they skip their meditation and they, go on their journey. Then they finish the journey and they say, I'm so tired. I'll skip meditation tonight. Or another person, they get sick and they say, I'm feeling ill. So I'll skip meditation. Then when they get well again, they say, I'm well, I got so many things to do now, I'll have to skip meditation. You get my drift? The same thing for a few other types of categories. So the mind is always making excuses why it should skip its meditation, but then that's what happens, and then it becomes a habit. So anyway, so these coming back to the M&Ms. How many people saw the little bags of M&Ms on the counter? How many tried one? They're good, aren't they? They're small and sweet, right? M&M. So there's a meditator's M&M. That's called a minute meditation. And this refers to a practice that you do throughout the day of pausing every hour for 1 minute. So you might have just finished a certain job, and whether they make apps now that will ring every hour and remind you to meditate or something like that. But anyway, so every hour you train yourself to stop that push to the future and just bring your mind to the present moment, bring it to the body. And standing is one of the best times actually to do that. But you could do it while you're sitting too. But whenever you finish one job, you just finish checking your emails, and before you go to check your answering my phone messages, stop. Break that rush to the future and just feel your body touching the floor. Feel your feet pressing the floor if you're standing. Feel your buttocks pressing the seat if you're sitting. And just remind yourself, I just here and now, standing, sitting. And take a couple of deep, slow breaths. Actually, how many people like that, taking a deep, slow breath, during the retreat, when I said, take a deep, slow breath? It's quite nice, right? Why is that? Why does that feel good? Anybody have an idea why does it feel good?
It brings you in the present.
Right. Because it takes all your effort to breathe in, to regulate your breath. It takes effort to do that. So the mind doesn't, and it's largely a pleasant thing. And so, yes, it brings the mind to the present moment, and you temporarily forget what you were rushing around trying to do. And so you try to do that for 2 or 3 breaths. Even 2 or 3 slow, deep breaths is already a minute. And it can relax the body also, especially you hold in the breath. You hold in the breath and allow that oxygen to get into the bloodstream, and breathe out slowly and feel those piti vibrations. And, in the space of 1 minute, you can kind of have gotten a little bit relaxed and kind of forgotten about what you might have been obsessing about in the previous hour. Or if you didn't necessarily get that relaxed, at least you could practice metta. Let's say in the previous hour you got angry with somebody, or somebody double-crossed you or whatever, or spoke rough to you, and you can kind of reflect on it. And on the out-breath, you send them metta. May this person be free from their anger. May they be well and happy, rather than plotting a revenge against them or some other negative thoughts, right? So you are able to let go of that negative thought so you don't take it into the next hour. But that's what a lot of people do during the day, isn't it? They accumulate stress and tension or negativity throughout the day because they've never stopped to pause or reflect on it. And then by the end of the day, they're a nervous wreck. During the day in an office, and so many different people are telling them what to do, or you shouldn't have done that, or you should do this. And, people are all harried and frustrated, burned out, and they have to stop at the pub or the bar on the way home, or the massage parlor to, get their tension released, so on. But by doing the M&Ms, and it's not just doing one, but if you can do them every hour, by the end of the day, you'll have had at least maybe 10 minutes of quality kind of meditation. Because anybody should really be able to stop for 1 minute, because we waste so much time doing things anyway during the day, right? So everybody should be able to stop for 1 minute and keep their mind focused. Any more than that, it gets difficult. But for 1 minute, especially if you're doing a couple breaths, that's already 1 minute. And so you do something good for your body, taking some deep, slow breaths, and you're doing something good for your mind also, by slowing down that neurotic rush to the future. So the more you can do that, the more of you'll see the benefits of doing that, and the more you will want to do it also. So there's a lot of good benefits can come from that. And then hopefully by the end of the day, then you might feel like meditating longer in the evening. So those M&Ms are not a substitute for longer meditation, but they're a supplement. Like you take vitamin supplements, right? So M&Ms are like a supplement, meditation supplement, to close the gaps between the long periods between your longer meditations. So if you meditate in the morning and evening, there's an 8 or 10 hour gap when usually you're not very mindful. So doing the M&Ms in between helps to kind of close those gaps. So if there was any New Year's resolution that you were thinking about doing, I would say, making a resolve to do more M&Ms would be probably one of the most beneficial New Year's resolutions that you could make. So those little mini meditations, because it's the frequency of the repetition is what builds new neural pathways and so on in the brain and nervous system. And doing longer meditations also is necessary because that helps you deal with pain and other agitations better, to endure pain a little longer, or to help overcome the other hindrances that may come up or that wouldn't come up in just a minute meditation. So the longer meditations, and also to develop deeper levels of concentration and mindful, especially concentrated mindfulness and wisdom. So, that's what I wanted to share with you on this as you enter the new year, and highly recommend that you make doing the M&Ms one of your New Year's resolution. Because if you forget to do it, there's always excuses why you can't meditate for an hour in the morning and evening, right? Sure, there's legitimate excuses. But stopping for 1 minute every hour? Come on, right? So, it kind of makes you, 1 minute, because you see how much time you waste during the day. And when you're not mindful during the day, you make a lot of mistakes that you have to clean up afterwards. So we spend a lot in the name of saving time or getting things done. We make mistakes that we often have to spend more time correcting than had we just did them a little bit more slowly with mindfulness and did it right the first time. Anybody ever notice that in their own life? But, why is it so difficult for people to really, develop this kind of practice and make it a habit? Because again, I talk to people who have been teaching M&Ms for the last 20 years, and I ask people, did you practice your M&Ms? Yeah, I did one. One's probably not very much, but it's like collecting raindrops off a roof, right? If you just collect 1 or 2 raindrops in a bucket off your roof, it's not going to give you enough to quench your thirst or wash your hands with it. But if you get enough of them, then it'll give you enough to wash your hands or quench your thirst. And then maybe I'll just leave you with one last the Buddhism in a nutshell. A lot of people read all this Dhamma, Teacher Samapada, and 37 factors of enlightenment, and all these things, 102 states of consciousness. It's very complicated. But actually, the whole of the Dhamma can be boiled down into one mathematical formula. We call that Buddhist mathematics. And the Buddha didn't actually maybe give this formula, but again, if you infer and intuit, you would realize that yes, he did give that information. But anyway, so short and concise. S equals P times R. Okay, that's a mathematical formula. Is it? Scientists? Okay. So S stands for suffering. P times R. What is P? I know some of you know this because you've heard it before. Pain, right. And R? What? Resistance, yes. Pain times resistance. It sounds like a physics formula, doesn't it? They're always talking about resistance in physics. So suffering equals pain times resistance. So if you have a pain of 5, from a 1 to 10 scale, let's say. If you have a pain of 5 and a resistance of 5, what's your suffering? Hillary? 25?
5 times 5?
5 times 5. Last time I heard, last time I looked, never know these days, they're coming up with all kinds of new things. But, and if you have a pain of 5 and a resistance of 1, what's your suffering? And if you have a pain of 5 and a resistance of 0, what's your suffering? There you go. Buddhism in a nutshell. And if that's all you can remember of all the things you've heard about Dhamma, you can attain liberation. But then you have to understand what is pain and what is resistance. So what is resistance? The Trinity. I, me, and mine. That's the resistance. The ego, basically. I don't like it. I don't want it. Get out of here. Or, I want it. Stay here, stay here. That's also resisting. It's resisting impermanence. So you're trying to stop, which is by nature changing. And so that's a kind of a resistance. Like if you put something into a river and try to stop the river, right? The river is flowing, and that little board you're putting in there is trying to resist this water coming down because you're trying to stop the flow of water. So that's what, whenever you catch your mind, struggling with something, whether it's physical pain or whether it's a thought, which an annoying person talking with you or whatever, identify it. This is pain. Pain is something you don't like, something you'd rather not have. And the resistance is the amount of effort you're putting out to, push it away or to hold onto it. And just try that next time. It's wonderful. It really works. I mean, the formula itself. So, if all these other things you heard and learned about sound too complex, just try to remember that, right? Suffering equals pain times resistance. Because we don't want to resist him any longer. This is our friend Indika, and he's brought the dana. So anyway, just a couple more minutes. Okay. So friends, so I'm glad that you could all come to this retreat. And for those who are listening out in virtual space, I hope that you're able to get some benefit from these Dhamma talks and meditations in the last few days. And hopefully at some point you'll be able to come here for an in-house retreat, because I think it is, let's say from these people that are here right now, you 10 people, you find it different than like just doing a retreat online or coming in person and doing a retreat. How many find it different, a little bit different?
You have more of an immersion, more.
Because if you're at home in between the online stuff, it's easy to get distracted, right? Okay, anyway, friends, I wish you all the best in your in this new year, and try to apply some of these little Dhamma tips, and aspects of practice, and the M&Ms and some of the other things. Try to, if you're not very flexible, work on, part of your New Year's resolution, try to get more flexible and see how that helps you to have a better meditations and so on. And so, okay. So again, like yesterday, these people, friends of ours, they have brought the lunch, and they're going to do a little Buddha Puja, as the people yesterday had done. So we invite them to come in and now it's a tradition in Sri Lanka that when people, they have items of food here and wait a second, to participate in the merit, they bring the dish around and you can touch it like with both hands and it's like you're participating in this merit. So if you like to do that, he's going to walk around and you can just touch it, usually with both hands. You brought your whole team with you today. So you want to move the flower so you can set the. As again, I'd like to invite Indika to give his idea of why they give dana. I mean, I've told you my reason why I think they give dana, but I'd like to hear it actually from them because they're the ones who do it quite often. Why do you feel like bringing food and giving it to the people who meditate?
We believe it's very important and it's a very more merits that you give dana for the people who accept these 5 precepts and people who meditate. It's more. We believe it's more. More merit you get. So anytime we get a chance to offer dana for the people who are observing this Dhamma, so we believe it's more merit. It's like best is to give it to Buddha, what we did. Second is to Sangha. So equal like people who meditate and do follow the seal precepts, we believe that's next most important thing. So that's why we always like to bring dana for the people who, not that everybody can do these things, not that everybody can come and stay here in one place for a couple of days and observe these precepts. So we always appreciate the people who do that. But we can't do it. So that's right.
And so the reason why they bring the food is so we don't have to spend hours preparing the food and take away from our, concentration. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it. And the fact that by you eating their food and practicing meditation, if that's going to help you be a better person, if that's going to remove some of your greed and hatred from the world, that's a good thing, isn't it? That means merit. That's what the meaning of merit means. It means things that we do that help reduce greed and hatred in the world, in ourselves and in the world as well, and then in that way making the world a better place. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
So you want to take the pansil? Come in. So they're going to take the refuges and precepts like the people did yesterday. If you want to join, in fact, why don't you take the 5 precepts because you're going home today, and you took the 8 precepts when you came here. So normally it's a tradition when you go home, because when you go home, you may want to eat in the evening with your friends, or you may want to watch movies or whatever. But so you take the 5 precepts to observe, or the 8 precepts, the ones we recited in English, but these 5 precepts are good to it. Okay. So recite the Namo Tassa 3 times.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Sarana gamanang sampunnang. Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Adinnadana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Sura mirya majjapama dattana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Having taken the 3 refuges together with the 5 precepts, strive on in your life of Dhamma. Say yes, Bhante. By morality they attain good rebirth, by morality they achieve wealth, by morality they achieve Nibbana. Therefore one should purify the skillful conduct. Sadhu. Sadhu. Okay, then now we'll recite the Buddha Puja as we did yesterday, offering the candlelight, the flowers, and the food, and then asking for the forgiveness. For those who know it, you can just chant along with us. Ganasarapadittina dipena tamadansina tilokadipang sambuddhang pujayami tamonudang Vanaganda gunopetang etang kusuma santating pujayami munindasa siripada saroruhi punjimi buddhang kusumina nena punyena etena chahotu mokkang Puppang milayati yatai dhamme kayo tatayati vinasa bhavam Kaya abhivase tuno bante paniyang parikapitang anukampang upadaya patigang hatu uttama Abhivasetu no Bhante Bhojanam Parikapitang Anukampang Upadaya Patigang Hatu Uttama Abhivasetu no Bhante Sambam Sadaya Pujitam Anukampang Upadaya Patigang Hatu Uttama Kayena Vacha Chittena Pamadena Maya Katang Achayam Kamami Bhante Buripanya Tathagata Achayam Kamami Dhamma Sanditika Akalika Achayam Kamami Sangha Supatipannanuttara Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satan samagamo hotu yavanibbana patiya sadhu sadhu sadhu. Let's also share the merits of offering this dana and also the merits that you've accrued through spending 3 days here meditating. That's one of the most powerful forms of accruing merit is the practice of meditation. That's why these people appreciate that. And that's also, we don't want to do it only for ourselves. We're not meditating only for ourselves, but as we improve ourselves, we help others. That's the point. And so we want to share these merits with our departed relatives. So if you have your departed mother or father, any other relatives who passed away, we share the merits. So wherever they might be, may they come to know that you are practicing meditation. It'll bring them a lot of happiness. And that happiness is their merit, is sharing their merit. Okay, so these gathas for sharing the merits. Idam ñatinam hotu sukita hontu ñatayo. Idam ñatinam hotu sukita hontu ñatayo. Idam ñatinam hotu sukita hontu ñatayo. Etavata ca ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Again, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Mohama pinsa devecha. Okay, so friends, this officially ends the retreat, and but again, just remember the retreat never should be over. It's just a kickstart for your mindfulness. It should hopefully always continue.